Welcome back, students. Welcome to biology classes. Today we are going to see 12th science biology and we are going to resume the chapter 3, that is the human reproduction. Today we are going to see one of the main topic of this chapter, and that is menstrual cycle. First we are going to see what exactly it includes, and then we'll shift to the figure and we'll understand that how exactly the menstrual cycle takes place. So menstrual cycle is the reproductive cycle in all primates and begins at puberty, right? So whenever the menstrual cycle is being started at the age of puberty, so that is known as, so the first menstrual cycle or the first menstruation is denoted as menarche, right? And it occurs in all the primates, right? In human females, the menstruation occurs once in 28 to 29 days. So every single menstruation occurs, it is a cycle which is running for 28 to 29 days. Now this cycle of events starting from one menstruation till the next one is called menstrual cycle. So why is it said to be a cycle? Because every single month a girl has to undergo this events, right? And the cycle of these events are starting from 1 month menstruation till the next one. So it has been calculated on the basis of 29 days. Now during the middle of the menstrual cycle, every single time one ovum is released by the ovary, and the release of the ovum from the ovary is known as ovulation, right? So the mark of the, or we can say the marking of the release of ovum from the ovary is said to be ovulation, and it occurs in the middle of the month, right? So if the cycle is of 29 days, right, then on the 14th day the ovulation is going to take place. That is, the ovum is released from the ovary. Now, the cycle starts with the menstrual flow for 3 to 5 days. So there will be a menstrual or the bleeding which is going to take place for 3 to 5 days. That is the starting of the cycle, and which is caused due to the breakdown on the endometrium of the uterus. We have already seen that there are the three main layers of uterus, right? The perimetrium, myometrium, and the endometrium. So the innermost layer, which is said to be endometrium, it was rich in blood vessels. That means it is going to contain much more amount of blood in it, and for this reason, when the menstrual cycle or when the menstrual flow is starting at the starting of the cycle, at that time the breakdown of the endometrium takes place, resulting into the menstrual flow. This menstrual flow occurs for 3 to 5 days. In several other girls there may be some changes, it can also occur for 7 to 8 days also. Next is the blood vessels in the liquid state are discharged, right? So whatever blood vessels which are present inside the endometrium, they are being discharged in the liquid state, right? And but this occurs only when the ovum is not fertilized, right? So when the fertilization of ovum with the sperm is not taking place, at that time only the menstruation is going to take place, right? So when the menstruation takes place, that is the marking, or we can say it is a marker that says that the particular fertilization has not taken place. Next is it is followed by the follicular phase. So the first phase is, that is a menstrual phase, right? The second phase is said to be the follicular phase. Now in the follicular phase, the primary follicles gets matured into the graphene follicles. So as we have already seen in the oogenesis as well as the section of the ovary, that what are primary follicles as well as what are graphene follicles. The primary follicles is the primary follicle which is having primary oocyte, whereas the graphene follicle is said to be the mature follicle containing the secondary oocyte, and that is nothing but the ovum. Now, this causes the regeneration of the endometrium, right? That means it is once the release, right, once the primary follicles gets matured to graphene follicles, it is responsible once like in the beginning of the 5 days, the endometrium has already broken down, right? So when the primary follicles get matured into the Graafian follicles, again the regeneration, again the building of the endometrium starts, right? And these changes are brought about by ovarian and pituitary hormones. So this the main two hormones which are responsible for this changes which are brought out in the uterus layers, right? And that is due to two hormones. The first is ovarian hormones and the second is the pituitary hormones. Now in this phase, there will be the release of gonadotropins, as we have already seen, the LH and the FSH, right? So the release of the gonadotropins is going to be increased in this stage when the ovulation will be taking place, right? So the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone, the levels of them increases, and this is going to cause the follicular growth. That means it is going to allow the follicles to grow and get matured, or we can simply say that it is going to cause the primary follicles to get matured and become the Graafian follicles. Now, uh, along with this, right, the growing follicles also produces estrogen, that is a female sex hormone, right? And along with this estrogen, it is responsible, that is one of the ovarian hormone which is released by the ovary, right? So the pituitary hormones and the ovarian hormones, they are been playing a very important role of the regeneration of the endometrium, right? Next, now the LH and FSH are at their peak in the middle of the cycle. So once I'll explain this, then we are going to see in the figure that how the at which day and in which time of the cycle there will be the LH and FSH which will be at the peak, that is the highest, right? And this is going to cause when the LH and FSH levels are very high, at that time the Graafian follicles, they are rupturing themselves and the release of ovum or the secondary oocyte takes place, and this particular phase is known as ovulatory phase, as the ovum is released out of the ovary. For this reason, this phase is known as ovulatory phase. Now whatever remains of the Graafian follicles, right, remains in the ovary, that all gets converted to a specialized thing, and that is known as corpus luteum. And the function of this corpus luteum is to secrete the progesterone, and this progesterone is responsible for maintaining the endometrium. So the building is already carried out once the menstruation is completed, right? On the 14th day, right, and that is the middle of the cycle, the release of the ovum takes place, and once there is a release of ovum, so whatever leftover of the Graafian follicle is there, that is converting itself into the corpus luteum. So this corpus luteum is responsible for secreting progesterone hormone, that is again an ovarian hormone, right? And this progesterone is maintaining the endometrium, and it is preparing the endometrium for the next menstrual cycle. Now, when there is absence of fertilization, that is when the fertilization is not taking place, at that time the corpus luteum gets degenerated, right? And there, for this reason, causing the disintegration of the endometrium and the start of a new cycle. So again, the endometrium is going to form when the fertilization is not taken place, right? So once the fertilization is not occurring, that is the absence of fertilization, the corpus luteum degenerates, right? And when it degenerates, it causes the disintegration of the endometrium, right? So what happens here? It prepares the endometrium for the next menstrual cycle. So again, after 29 days, again it is going to start with a new cycle with the breakdown of the endometrium. So in humans, the menstrual cycle ceases to operate at the age of 50 years. So generally nowadays, due to the present scenario, as we can see, at the age of 45 also the woman gets the menopause, right? That is the end of the reproductive cycle. So furthermore, that lady is not going to have the menstruation, or this is the marker that is the end, that it is the end of the reproductive cycle. So now she is not going to get the menstruation, or she is not able to give birth to any of the child. So in humans, the menopause period is at the age of 45 to 50. So now we are going to see the figure. So this is the figure through which we can understand that first we will see here it is written as pituitary hormone levels. The pituitary hormones are LH and FSH, that is luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So the blue line depicts the luteinizing hormone and the pink line depicts as follicle stimulating hormone. This is the ovarian events which are taking place inside the ovary, and these are the ovarian hormones, that are the two, estrogen and progesterone. And these are the uterine events, that is the endometrium, how the endometrium is broken down and how it is rebuilt, right? So here these are the three phases, main phases of the menstrual cycle: the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, and the third one, that is the luteal phase. And the first and the last, after then again the new cycle begins. So now first we will see the uterine events. Okay, so the uterine event says that for 1 to 5 days, so up till 1 to 5 days, the menstruation is going to take place. That is, the breakdown of the endometrium is going to take place. So now the endometrium is not there in the uterus. So once the menstruation is completed, after then it enters into a phase which is known as follicular phase. So as you can see here, it is also known as proliferative phase. That is, now here the proliferation will take place. That is, the maturation of the follicles is going to take place. So as you know that each and every month one single ovum gets matured. So again here in the follicular phase, again one primary follicle gets converted to the Graafian follicle on, and it ruptures out and it releases out the ovum, right? So this is about the follicular phase. So here, side by side in the follicular phase, the endometrium again starts to rebuild. The next will be the luteal phase, that is on the 14th day. As you can see here, in between the 13 and 15, there lies the 14th day, and where the, you can see here where I'm showing the cursor, right here, the ovulation takes place. So when the ovulation takes place, right, on the 14th day, so that is the rupturing of the Graafian follicle, and when the rupturing of Graafian follicle takes place, it releases out the ovum. So once the ovum is released, whatever leftover of Graafian follicle is there in the ovary, that gets converted to corpus luteum. So that particular phase is known as luteal phase. It is also known as secretory phase, as here this particular corpus luteum is responsible for releasing the progesterone, and this progesterone helps in maintaining the endometrium. So again, as you can see, the endometrium at here, that is from 7 to 11, as you can see, the level or the amount of the thickness, right, the thickness of the particular layer is comparatively thin, while you can see in the luteal phase it is very thick. So this is the difference, that again the endometrium is rebuilt till the end of the cycle. So once the endometrium is completely built and it reaches to the 29th day, after then on the next day, the next cycle begins. So this is about the uterine events from the day 1 to day 29. Next, we are going to see is about the ovarian hormone levels, right? So there are two ovarian hormones, right? The first is estrogen and the second one is progesterone. Here, the blue line depicts the estrogen and the pink line depicts the progesterone. Here, estrogen levels, as you can see over here, is when the ovulation is about to take place, the estrogen levels get at or it reaches to its peak, while the progesterone is not going to increase at this time. But once the ovulation takes place, and after then when the corpus luteum is formed, at that time this corpus luteum is responsible for release of progesterone. So you can see over here there is a peak of progesterone which is seen over here, and along with that there will be some estrogen levels also which will be released. Now here the next one is the ovarian events, that is the maturation of the follicle, right? So the follicle, right, the first follicle, now it is going to have, or it is said to be the primary follicle, because it is having one layer around it of granulosa cells. After then it is inside it is having the primary oocyte, right? After then there will be another layer of the granulosa cells and the theca, right? And it is going to form the secondary follicle. After then, there will be a antrum fluid which has been filled in the cavity, and marking of that is said to be the tertiary follicle. And furthermore, it gets converted to the mature follicle, that is nothing but the Graafian follicle. So once the mature follicle is being ruptured, it is going to release what? The ovum, and that marks on the 14th day, that is the ovulation. So once the ovulation takes place, once the ovum is released, it forms the corpus luteum, that whatever leftover of the Graafian follicle is there, it gets converted into corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum simultaneously, slowly and gradually, it degenerates, right? So these are the ovarian events, that is all the events which are taking place inside the ovary. And the last one, that is the pituitary hormone levels, that is we have seen the two one, right? That is, first is LH, that is luteinizing hormone, and the second one is FSH, that is the follicle stimulating hormone. Now you can see over here, the blue colored line shows about the LH and the pink colored line shows about the FSH. So here the LH levels are the LH as well as FSH, both the level or both the hormones are at the peak at the time when the ovulation is taking place. So in the middle of the cycle, both the pituitary hormone levels are elevated, and furthermore, after then, once the ovulation is taking place, after then it will be again coming back to its normal place. So this is all about today's lecture, that is about the menstrual cycle, right? And I hope you are very clear with today's topic, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.